Hi everyone, I'm Alyssa and welcome to my first YouTube video. I was born and raised in China, then studied and now work in the US. Luckily with a bunch of very loving and kind colleagues. Actually, the reason why I started to want to make this series of video was because of them. Because I started to feel it's very hard for me to respond to them when they ask me kindly, Alyssa, how are your family and friends in China? Are they okay? Well, they are. They're fine physically. None of them has caught the coronavirus, which is a huge blessing nowadays. After all, as of now, according to the official sources, there are 68.5 thousand people diagnosed, about 10,000 recovered, and 1.7 thousand died from it. But there's so much more to it than the numbers. Coronavirus is not just a health concern. It's not even just a public health issue in China. It has deeply impacted and changed permanently a lot of Chinese people's lives in a lot of ways, infected or not. Every number, and even outside of those numbers, has a story behind it. And I want to share those stories that I know with you who really care. Today, let's start with who might be the most famous diagnosed patient, Dr. Wenliang. You've probably read about him from the news 10 days ago when he passed away, referred to as the coronavirus whistleblower. In China, his death also became a nationwide stir. People stayed up until 3 a.m. to get an update about his resuscitation, and his condition made it to the top 1 topic in Chinese Twitter, Weibo. And you'd see all sorts of people coming from different backgrounds talking about him and his death in WeChat, Chinese #1 messaging app. So, who is Dr. Li? And why his death was such a big deal? Of course, he was an admirable person, the whistleblower who himself contracted and eventually died from the virus. Even the Chinese officials recognize him as a hero. And I believe anyone would agree with that, especially when you know that he was accused of rumor mongering by the police and was made to sign an admonishment notice in early January after he warned about the new cases of SARS-like virus infection in his medical school alumni messaging group. I believe that was December the 30th, 2019. He was indeed a hero. A lot of doctors and nurses started to pay extra attention to self-protection after seeing his notice. But for me, and for a lot of Chinese people who feel that deep, deep sorrow, he was more than a hero. He was a doctor who felt the happiest when getting off work and couldn't resist the temptation to just show off when he finally got the whole 2 days off for his weekend. He would skip meals to treat his patients, but would still secretly complain about some of them. He also reflected about being impatient at work and thanked his patients for tolerating and understanding him. He could be geeky and loved to try out new technologies. He was an early adopter of a lot of new products by Xiaomi, ByteDance, Smartisan, and etc. And at times, he could be stopped by his wife from buying another new device. Although pretty concerned about his own weight, he also really enjoyed delicious food, craving carbohydrates, and seemed to be really addicted to fried chicken drumsticks. He was a snooker fan and liked watching soccer. He felt the financial stress, just like many of his generation coming of age. He got upset about realizing not being able to afford to buy cherries. He also complained about how expensive the prenatal supplements are, with of course bittersweetness, because that meant he was becoming a dad. He moved to Wuhan to live with his wife and loved to share the pictures of his growing son, just like a lot of parents. He cared about the people who he knew and loved, and that's why he shared the warning messages to them soon after he heard about it. Because he knew they're all on the front line, facing danger every single day. But he never intended to be a hero. Nor did he ever decided or prepared to risk being caught out by an official. When the police came to him and asked him to stop the illegal behaviors, he actually agreed. He signed an admonishment notice stating he would stop the illegal behaviors and was aware of the possibility of further punishment should he continue. He then went back, kept working as a doctor, under a lot of mental stress, I assume, until getting infected by what he warned about. And that's why his experience and his death was such a tragedy, such a big deal. It's not because he's a hero, which he obviously is, but because he's an ordinary person. He's just like any one of us. He worked and played like any of us. He loved and feared like any of us. He led a life like any of us, which means what happened to him could easily happen to any one of us. That deep empathy and feeling of connection is where the nationwide sorrow, fury, frustration all came from. There's nothing political about it. It's all humanity. So back to the question, who is Dr. Li? My answer is, he's an ordinary person, just like you and me, who did great things out of love, just like you and me, and will be remembered so, hopefully, by you and me. Thanks for watching.